welcome to the meeting of the Sustainability Commission. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T UVerse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. Call 818-548-4013 for program schedules. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when that agenda item is discussed. If you have any question about matters on the agenda or requests for assistance, please contact the Management Services Department at 818-548-4844 during regular business hours. And please, just a reminder, please turn off your cell phones. Thank you.
Roll call. We have Commissioner Bartrosov, Commissioner Kartunian,
Present.
Commissioner Werner,
Here.
Vice Chair Bazemore,
Here.
Chair Pinkerton,
Here.
Ex officio Borsov,
Here.
Ex officio Kudo.
Here.
Okay, next item is 1A, Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item 1B, Land Acknowledgement.
We would like to acknowledge that we're holding this meeting in the city of Glendale on the traditional lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people. We would like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and the Tongva communities who continue to be stewards of this land. We encourage our audience to learn more about the Tongva tribe and the many indigenous communities in California and beyond. You can find a list of books and resources at eglendalelac.org/Native American 2022. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that Commissioner Bartrosov has entered the dais and is present now. Next item is 1C, the agenda for the July 6th, 2023 meeting of the Sustainability Commission was posted on July 3rd, 2023 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Next item is 2, approval of minutes. 2A, approval of the minutes of the Commission regular meeting held June 1st, 2023.
Does anyone have any comments or corrections on the minutes?
I'd like to move that we approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Commissioner Bartrosov,
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bazemore,
Yes.
Chair Pinkerton. Next item is 3, board member staff comments.
Any comments from board members?
Yeah, we have something I think we've sent to Ms. Harris to put up. So we're gonna just do the other one actually. So disregard that first one. So this is something that Commissioner Bartrosov and I have put together for our community organization called Walk by Glendale. So we've organized a series of events taking place this summer here in Glendale with the generous support of the Southern California Association of Governments. We received a grant from them to put on these events and are partnering with our parent organization, Bike LA, to do them. So we will be kicking things off, not this weekend, I guess it's 2 weeks from this weekend, Saturday, July 22nd, with a community ride with our very own Mayor Dan Brotman. And the location of that is to be determined, but we're good. All right, well, we're gonna be hosting that here at the Civic Center. So we'll be meeting outside in Parcher Plaza And there'll be a free bike repair happening as well. So with this event, you still want to do the other one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have more information on that in a second. I'm just going to be doing a summary of all of them. Following that in August, we'll do a kids skills course. That'll also be here. All of these are in Glendale, but that one is still to be determined. It will also have a bike repair accompanying it. Following that, we'll do a walking event that'll be focused on kind of surveying and auditing our city streets here. And we'll be talking about pedestrian safety and access within our community. And then following that, we're going to do a feeder ride into Hollywood from Glendale. This is for the Ciclavia, LA Metro Ciclavia event that takes place every, I think they're quarterly. So we'll be bringing a group of bicyclists down there. And then lastly, rounding out our events is going to be an advocacy webinar that will be online. Of course, we'll be speaking with members of the public and describing ways in which they can engage with their local elected officials and help improve the safety of their community. So that's it, and I'm going to hand it off to Commissioner Bartusoff to speak about our first event.
Thanks, Cole. So if you can switch over, Elizabeth, to the next flyer. So these flyers are hot off the presses. They're not on our website yet, but I encourage folks to take a snapshot of these two flyers. As Cole mentioned, our first event will be on July 22nd. This will include a bike ride with Mayor Brotman, including a bike repair clinic for folks who have had bikes in their garage for a while, have been sitting with flat tires or with chains that need to be lubed. So feel free to come, bring your bike. You don't necessarily have to come on the ride itself, but obviously we encourage you to join us to ride the streets of Glendale. And as I mentioned, this is the first, or as Cole mentioned, this is the first of many events as part of our summer event series. So you can use that QR code at the bottom to RSVP for any of the events that Cole had mentioned, including the mayor's bike ride. And again, we'll follow up on our social media, so feel free to follow us at Walk Bike Glendale, and we'll provide more updates as these events get closer. Thanks.
This is wonderful. I'm really impressed. Just a question, is there a cap on the number of people that can sign up for this ride on the 22nd?
No, everybody's welcome and encouraged to attend.
How long is the ride, mile-wise?
We'll provide more updates as we get closer, and we'll update folks who RSVP for the event. But just so you know, it's probably about 6 miles, less than an hour. I assume will be the duration of the ride.
Any other comments?
Chairperson Pickerington, I have another comment. Speaking of LA Metro, last year's LA Metro Go Pass cards for fiscal year 22-23 have expired officially on June 30th. Although now, if you're still enrolled in community college or you're a headlining institution, you can reapply for free this year and get the TAP card the same day. So just putting it out there.
It seems we have no more comments.
Chair Pickerington, if I may, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Ex Officio Kudo and Ex Officio Borisov for your excellent exemplary service to this commission over the last year. And we'd like to invite you back to the August commission meeting so we can give you a proper send-off. But just from staff, just thank you for everything that you've done for us.
Next agenda item is for oral communications. Discussion is limited to items within the jurisdiction of the Sustainability Commission. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Sustainability Commission members may question or respond to speaker, but there is no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff for investigation and report. And we don't have any callers and no speakers in the audience. So we can go to next item, 5A, action items, selection of student ex officio non-voting members, motion approving the selection and appointment of student ex officio non-voting members to the Sustainability Commission.
Good evening, Chairperson Pinkerton and Commissioners of the Sustainability Commission. So staff recommend that the Sustainability Commission select and appoint 2 ex officio candidates as recommended by the Ad Hoc Student Member Selection Committee, and I'll let the Selection Committee talk to their choices in a minute. This year we received 7 applications that met the qualification criteria. Again, these were high achieving candidates, so we were very happy to proceed them and pass them on to the Ad Hoc Student Member Selection Committee so they could do their interviews, which they did over 2 days, and I think we had the last interview yesterday. And with that, I'd like to pass over to the committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. So we, on behalf of the Student Selection Committee, I just want to start by congratulating all of the candidates who applied and thank them. Yes. Thank you. We welcome that and would encourage folks to please apply again next year if they weren't selected this year. So as Mr. Jones said, we did have 7 applicants. It was a tough choice. They're all very, very qualified, very impressive students, and we had a wonderful time meeting them all. So I think with that, I would like to announce the 2 nominations that we have for the commission, and they are Shant Ispenjian and Jeremy Welch. And then I will invite our 2 ex officio commissioners to please speak about those 2 candidates and explain a little more about why we chose them. So I'll invite ex officio Commissioner Kudo to please start.
Yeah, so again, thank you all for applying. It was really great seeing how much interest we had this year. So we were really impressed by Jeremy's application, and we were really happy to learn more about him during the interview process. But what made him really stand out among the other applicants was his passion for the environment and his connection to it, as well as his action that he's taken already up to this point. So he has a really solid background in sustainable development, and he also has leadership experience serving his school's its Environment and Sustainability Governance Committee. So he has a lot of experience doing things that we do here. So I thought it would be a really great fit for this. And then overall, we just thought he would be a great fit for the commission, and we're really looking forward to seeing what projects he works on, and then also what insight he brings to the commission. So congratulations.
And so for the second pick, it's going to be Sean Ispenjian. Congratulations, Sean. So when we were interviewing him, particularly what stood out to me was his inclination for solutions, so recycling solutions, transit solutions, and his advocacy for breaking down apathy in the general public and politicians at large. There was a big discussion on 3 words and what do those 3 words mean to you. And when he divulged into them, he really stood out to me as not only a speaker, but as someone who really understands sustainability and the environment as a whole. And we welcome these 2. In fact, they were both so good that it was unanimous. We both wanted Sean and Jeremy. So yeah, lucky them. Congratulations, guys, if you're watching.
All right. Well, will I make the motion? So with that, I'd like to make the motion to nominate or to select Shant Ispenjian and Jeremy Welch for our 2 ex officio commission members.
Second.
Roll call. Commissioner Bartrosif,
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bazemore,
Yes.
Chair Pinkerton.
Yes.
Great. Congrats, students, if you're watching. Next item is 6, reports and information. 6A, MWELO and GMC Landscape Ordinance Review.
So, good afternoon again, Commissioner Pinkerton and Commissioners. Before I begin this presentation, This is a very high-level overview, so I want to set that expectation. I'm not a subject matter expert in this field, but as you do have questions, where I can answer the questions, I will. Where I can't answer the questions, I'll take those questions back, and I'll get them and I'll respond to the Commission either through email or at the next meeting. So the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. So about half of California, and this is really dense, so again, I apologize. About half the urban water produced in California is used for landscape irrigation. The California Department of Water Resources recognized that large water savings can be gained through efficient landscape design and installation and through management and maintenance. The mandatory Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance was created by the California Department of Water Resources as a model for local agencies to enforce minimum standards in landscape design, construction, and management. So far, research has shown that by implementing mandatory water efficient landscape ordinances, one can use up to 80% less water, require 60% less maintenance, and produce 50% less yard waste. So what were the goals of the state in putting together this ordinance? That is to promote the values and benefits of landscaping practices and to make that a holistic position when they're implementing landscape programs. The MWELO provides a path to design, install, manage, and maintain landscapes that conserve water. It establishes provisions for water management practices and water prevention for existing landscapes. The sets goals to use water efficiently without waste by setting a maximum applied water allowance as an upper limit for water use and reduce water use to the lowest practical amount, and encourages local agencies and water purveyors to use economic incentives that promote the efficient use of water, such as implementing a tiered rate structure. So when this was passed, all local agencies must adopt or enforce the MWELO ordinance or establish their own ordinance, which is as strict or if not stricter. And then local agencies are required to report implementation of every year by January 31st. In our last report that the city submitted to the Department of Water Resources, the total landscape areas subject to the ordinance was 117,000 square feet within the city of Glendale, and that comprised of 123 housing starts, 2 new commercial properties, and 3 landscape retrofits. The MWELO came into force after December 2015, and it affects 2 types of projects. So new construction with an aggregate landscape area equal to or greater than 500 square feet, requiring a building or landscape permit for plan check or design review. And rehabilitation landscape projects with an aggregate landscape area equal to greater than 2,500 square feet. In addition to those, there is for existing landscapes too. For existing landscapes, we need to implement a water audit, water surveys for any landscape greater than 1 acre, and prohibit also the irrigation runoff to adjacent properties, so to stop water just being spread onto land before it moves on. So there are some exemptions for the ordinance. But there's basically 2 pathways that can be applied. So for projects for between the 500 and 2,000 square foot threshold, there is a prescriptive pathway. And for projects over 2,500 square feet, there is a performance pathway that can be followed. And I have those pathways if you're interested. For example, for the performance pathway, projects have to include a water efficient landscape water budget calculator, so they have to calculate how much water will be used through the planting of what's going to go into the landscape. They have to submit a soil management report. They have to submit a landscape design plan with the plant legend specifications and details. They have to submit an irrigation plan, and they have to submit a grading design plan. And then with the prescriptive requirements, there's obviously, it's a lot more prescriptive about how much compost must be applied, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a very, very brief overview. And so that is the state ordinance which the city has adopted. And then we can add to that, those regulations, but as we add to those regulations, as mentioned earlier, they have to be more stricter than those current regulations. So in the Glendale Municipal Code, Title 30 zoning, Chapter 30.31 is where the landscaping sits. I'm just going to talk about the first two highlighted areas because that's the bulk of the language that's in the code. So as mentioned, projects subject to the MWILO shall comply with those regulations in addition to all the regulations in Chapter 30. In the case of any conflict between MWILO and the code, the MWILO shall prevail, except that in cases conflict whereby the city code imposes a requirement intended to be more effective in conserving water than MWILO code. That in that case, the Glendale Municipal Code shall prevail. For properties and all other projects not subject to the MWILO, the city has established regulations, and I'll just talk about those briefly. For residential zones, all setback areas shall be landscaped with plant materials or combination of plant materials and permeable surfaces, and shall be permanently maintained in a neat and orderly manner. Non-living materials may be used as ground cover. Plant materials shall compose a majority, more than 50% of the street setback areas. Other than permitted hardscape, all areas not planted shall be covered with materials such as wood chips or approved alternatives. And permeable surfaces are encouraged wherever possible in lieu of impermeable surfaces. And top dressing beneath tree canopies shall be satisfaction to the Director of Community Development.
Could I ask for a quick clarification? Street setbacks, are those parkways or between the street and the parkway, or what is that?
I believe that's between the curb and the
Property line.
yeah. Again, for residential, a minimum 40% of the total lot area shall be permanently landscaped, open space. Decorative design elements such as swimming pools, spas, etc. May be permitted where they are integral parts of the landscape plan, that is composing a majority of 50% or more. When drought-tolerant landscaping is used, the live plant material requirement shall be calculated at the mature growth of the drought-tolerant plants. Within single-family residential zones, artificial turf may be used, but it should not be calculated towards, or artificial turf shall be calculated towards the total lot area requirement for landscaping, but shall not be calculated towards the live plant material equipment. It should not be permitted beneath the drip line of tree canopies, and again, a minimum 3-foot wide live plant material. Landscape border shall be required in the street front. And artificial turf shall only be permitted on sloped areas less than 25% to avoid all the water runoff that's associated with artificial turf. So for multi-family, commercial, industrial, and mixed-use zones, again, the same applies. Whatever stricter is the ordinance that would apply. All setback areas and other areas not occupied by buildings, parks, driveways, and walkways, and other incidental activities shall be landscaped with the majority more than 50% of plant materials. Again, permeable surfaces are encouraged whenever possible. Again, decorative design elements such as fountains, planters, rocks, etc. May be permitted where they are integral parts of the landscape plan, composed of a 50% majority of live plant materials. Pedestrian walks and vehicular accessways shall be permitted in such landscaped areas. Such areas may not be counted as landscape open space in the zones. Again, when drought-tolerant landscaping is used, the plant material requirement shall be calculated at the mature growth of drought-tolerant plants. Permanent automatic irrigation facilities shall be provided in all permanent landscape areas except potted containers. Prior to the issuance of any building permit, all landscape and irrigation plans shall be prepared and wet stamped by an architect, an individual who is licensed by the state of California to prepare such plans. And prior to the issuance of any temporary permanent use occupancy certificate, an individual licensed in the state of California to prepare landscape and irrigation plans shall file a certificate of compliance with the building official certifying that all landscape irrigation facilities have been installed. Again, artificial turf shall not be permitted in any portion of a property located in a commercial, industrial, or special purpose zones. Artificial turf shall be permitted on property located in mixed-use zone only, but not visible from the street and immediately adjacent to the property. So that, as I said, is a very brief overview. I'm not sure where the commissioner is thinking of going with this, or what they'd like to do regarding the landscape ordinance, but I just wanted to provide that brief overview, get direction or recommendation from the commission of how they want to proceed on this. And then once we get that direction, we can then call in the subject matter experts to come back in and respond to the commission's questions or whatever, or however they want to proceed with this particular subject matter.
You weren't kidding when you said it's dense and
I'm sorry.
I am not a subject matter expert on this either. And I understand that Amuelo is the base, is the minimum that we have to comply with, and we can go beyond Amuelo. Correct? Oh, that better? What I would like to know is that if we do choose to go beyond Amuelo, what are some of the ordinances that other cities have adopted and have been successful? Especially in our area. I mean, comparing Glendale to Idlewild may not be a good comparison, or comparing us to Oakland may not be a good comparison, but in our area, I would say San Gabriel Valley, San Fernando Valley, what are some options? Since I'm not a subject matter expert.
No, we can do that. So we can look at the water efficient landscape ordinances done by the cities, see that how it compares to what we have, and see how far beyond the state code.
Right.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
What are the options beyond Amuelo?
Right.
The reason I was interested in this is I've gone to a lot of planning commission meetings, design review board meetings and so on, and they barely mention landscape. It's more like they check a box like, oh, there's a landscape plan, and I just wasn't really feeling like they were digging into it. So at the time this passed, I was working in a landscape architectural studio, so I didn't find any of this dense at all, but I just happen to have a background in this. So it just seems like it was, we have to comply with this new thing, but then no time was spent, like when the case planners talk about the different, if you've ever been to one of these meetings, they go through the whole plan and the history of the project and what they're planning to do, and landscape is just barely, if it's mentioned at all, it's just a few seconds. And so it would be nice to see more of what that process looks like who's actually looking at it, who's vetting it against MULO, because it's not on there as a finding, even as far as if they're applying for something to be approved, it's just not really there. They're not asked to demonstrate how they've met that requirement, really, I don't think, sufficiently enough. So if someone were to come to speak, give some examples of those, and maybe how there were ones that didn't meet the qualification, and this is what they did to get them in compliance with it. Examples like that would be useful, I think, and would assure the public that this was actually being followed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Warner, if I may just briefly answer a question that you just brought up. I'm not entirely sure what the process looks like if they choose that it's not compliant with this. But in the last 2 design review board meetings that I've seen, one commissioner brings up drought-resistant plants, but not everybody. So that would be something interesting to bring up as well. And so tying in with that question is, are there any in lieu fees a developer might pay to bypass this ordinance?
I hope not, but,
Yeah.
well, actually, the design review board is supposed to include at least one landscape architect. It hasn't for many years. There used to be 2 design review boards, and then they consolidated it to one, and kind of, I actually happened to know the person that was on there, and she was kind of convinced she was no longer needed, and, left. But that was a huge loss, I think, to the board. So I haven't listened to one of the meetings in a while. I'm glad that somebody at least brought it up once, but I don't think that's sufficient. But Glendale's unique in a few ways. Like, a lot of cities don't allow artificial turf at all in the front yard. So many years ago, Glendale decided that you can put it in your front yard, you just can't count it as live material. So instead of mineral mulch or something, you have artificial turf, that kind of thing. So we differ a little bit compared to others, but it would be good to see what all is being done to comply with this.
Anybody else have I would like to see artificial turf banned, personally, especially, it's a petroleum product. We don't want to be adding something to the city that is not recyclable and is going to go to the landfill at the end of its useful life. It makes the immediate area hotter, which we certainly don't need. So, and to me, it's like mulch would be much more attractive than artificial turf anyway. So that would be my suggestion, is just to not allow it.
I have a quick question, David. Does this ordinance in any way impact or conflict with our gray water system programs or ordinances?
So it's my understanding Title 13 in the Glendale Municipal Code is the title that establishes, like, when the city council says we have to go beyond the state mandated water efficiency practices, that title will take precedence over the MWELO code because it's stricter. But I don't know in terms, I think my understanding of the MWELO ordinance is that as you're putting together the landscape plans and design plans, you have to identify the source of water. So is it potable water? Is it non-potable water? And you have to submit all of that information with your plans when you do submit it.
Thank you so much.
My question is, can the developers, so similar to what the fellow commissioner said, they can pay to exempt themselves. Can they exempt if it's recycled water, gray water? Is there exemptions for, recycled water? I'm not sure.
Just to follow up on that, I believe we have an excess of recycled water coming out of the LA Glendale plant. It's not all used. I mean, they do put it into the river for recharge purposes, but they're still looking for more customers.
So, again, it's my understanding that the city has to adopt this code in its entirety, which it does. The only exemptions are the exemptions stated here, whether it's a registered local state project, whether it's an ecological restoration project, or an existing plant collection project. And I know there's an exemption for cemeteries too. There's some type of opt-out for them, but that's, as far as I'm aware, if it's within that threshold of 500 to 2,500 square feet, so it's a new development, 500 square feet or more, or it's a rehabilitation project over 2,500 square feet, the code then applies to that project. So, and I don't think there's fees in lieu of, but I'll clarify that point.
Also wanted to say thank you for the overview, very helpful. One of the things that I'm curious about, I'm also interested in what other cities are doing. It's not a local example, but I do know Las Vegas, for example, does not allow grass at all because of the water shortages that they have that we're not so far behind from. So I am curious what other cities are doing, if they're exceeding MWELO standards, what those standards are. I am also curious how this relates to stormwater capture policy. So the city of LA has an ordinance called low impact development that is specific to stormwater capture on site at the property. And I think it applies to new construction and remodels as well. So I'm curious how this interfaces with a potential policy like that, which I don't think we have here in Glendale yet. And then another thing I'd like to dive into is this differentiation between new construction versus rehab or existing landscaping. It'd be great if we at some point got subject matter experts and staff with us here. One of the things that I would be asking, and this even relates to like the gas, building electrification ordinance, is like, how many projects do we see? How many parcels are affected by each of these two paths? So how many parcels fit under new construction where we get this benefit from, or this water efficiency from, and how many parcels are affected by this rehab / existing landscape path? I'm curious what those are, because I'd like to know like what exactly triggers the rehab area arm of this. So yeah, I'd like to dive into that further, just to get a better understanding of what the impact of this ordinance is, to then inform my opinion on whether or not it should be expanded to apply to more parcels, so that whatever policy we're supporting and adopting, it has an actual impact versus, just a few parcels here and there throughout the year.
I had a few comments, one applies to the ordinance that, it's unfortunate, it's like the low-impact development. These things, when they're adopted, apply to new construction or significant renovations. But our big problem is existing, the existing built environment and landscapes. So just a couple of things. I recall, I think Elizabeth told us you had applied for a grant to take out the turf in front of this building and substitute xeriscaping. I'm just wondering, this is probably a very high-traveled corridor here, so I'm just wondering if you could look into collaborative projects, possibly with schools or community groups, to convert this to xeriscaping. And I don't know if it's possible to isolate the watering here, but I assume it's traditional spray watering versus drip, since it's mostly turf. But I think this would be a great demonstration project, because I think so many people would see it. And you could even try maybe different things to get rid of the gas, cardboard, digging things up, et cetera, just to see how labor intensive and effective they are. And then the other thing is, I drive around Glendale. I just wonder if we could come up with what, like Commissioner Barterswift was saying, it would be nice to know how many parcels would be affected, but I would like to know what's our baseline. As I drive around, I see so many homes with front yards that are grass, and even ones where I know that people don't have children or pets. That's just a convention. We imported from England, over 100 years ago, and grass really, truly doesn't belong here, especially when you look at the water consumption, and then you create this organic waste that most people are putting in a container, and then the city has to pay to process it because it can't go into the landfill anymore. It would be very interesting if we come up with a rough baseline of how many acres of turf we already have, whether privately or publicly owned. I mean, just, what's the average lot size? Take a third of that or something. But I would also like to see, even though this wouldn't apply, some sort of outreach to existing homeowners about, are you aware of all the environmental impacts of having turf, on your property, the water consumption, et cetera, et cetera. One other thing, excuse me, I wonder, I know this came up in LA when you're looking at solar installations and energy efficiency. A lot of your older multifamily buildings they're not sub-metered for electricity. Same thing for water. I think very few homes or buildings have separate meters or ways of gauging, is it interior usage water versus exterior landscaping purposes. Maybe just something to consider for future construction. If somebody could, is to have separate meters or separate systems for that, so it would be easier to count for how much water are you using for landscaping. I mean, we know the estimate's 40 to 60%, and what's the dollar value on that? Because maybe you want to charge more for landscaping water usage. Thanks.
Okay, next agenda item is 6B, ban on the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. It's me. So now we're going to talk about the ban on the use of gas-powered leaf blowers and kind of get a chance for you to provide feedback on it. So this ban comes originating from California Assembly Bill 1346, which passed a few years ago, which banned the sale of gas-powered small off-road engines by 2024, and that has gone into effect. So by 2024, small off-road engines or SOARs that are gas powered the sale of those are banned in California, but not the use. And you'll find these small engines in items like golf carts, jet skis, and even airport equipment, and of course landscaping equipment like in some smaller lawnmowers, and primarily in like leaf blowers. So it's a common piece of an engine that you'll see. So why did this assembly bill happen? Well, part of the reason of banning SOARs is noise. Obviously, they're quite loud, as many of you may have been woken up by leaf blowers in your neighborhoods. And also, these engines are highly polluting. If you look at the little graphic on the left, it's very interesting how running a lawnmower for an hour could be worse than driving to Las Vegas. And this is looking at like a gas-powered Toyota Camry from like a couple years ago, which is quite impressive. And then you have leaf blowers, which are even worse. It's like from driving from LA to Denver. So I guess if you're out in the yard using your gas leaf blower, you're blowing up more fumes than taking your road trip. But so some of these pollutants aren't just like carbon emissions, but you're also looking at like oxides of nitrogen, you have your organic gases, and then particulate matter, which, is dust and things in the environment, including feces. And on top of that, you have health impacts on operators because of the noise. You find operators having like hearing loss, and because they're blowing up particulate matter and such, if they're not taking care of to cover their mouth, you have issues of like lung issues and asthma. And then also by blowing leaves and such and not keeping it on the ground, you lose a source of nutrients. So other cities have banned leaf blowers. So there's cities that have just banned gas leaf blowers, like West Hollywood, for instance. They've had this ban in place for like 20 years almost. And then you have cities that are newer to the table, like Pasadena and South Pasadena, that recently they've passed these ordinances and they've recently gone into effect. And then you have a smaller number of cities that banned all leaf blowers, which are like City of Santa Monica, Laguna Beach, and Del Mar. And then you have the very, very, very few which have banned all gas leaf blowers. And so far, that's kind of been like Ojai and the city and county of San Francisco. So how did this issue of leaf blowers and gas leaf blowers come to Glendale? Well, I do want to give a shout out to our Community Services and Parks Department. They have actually been transitioning their maintenance services and all the tools that they use to electric landscaping equipment before this kind of issue came into council. And they I think will this year be able to transition all their maintenance equipment to electric that's handheld. It was very impressive, and all the like maintenance that you see that's done with contractors, that's like handheld and push-held equipment like lawnmowers and leaf blowers, that's electric even with their like contracted maintenance. So like here at City Hall, they have another organization do the maintenance and they use all electric equipment. So they've been really leading the charge in terms of like city maintenance on going to electric landscaping equipment. And then last year, this came in as a city council request into our office. And then in October, we went to get direction from city council to see if they wanted to ban all gas powered SOARs or if they wanted to just do landscaping equipment or just leaf blowers. They provide direction in October to kind of look at 2-stroke gas engines, which are common, what you see in leaf blowers and like small lawnmowers. And then in February of 2023, they gave directions to staff to develop an ordinance to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. And then an introduction ordinance will go into introduction in later this month to City Council. So that's kind of the journey it's taken so far. So the ordinance that would be going to City Council, what does it encompass? It encompasses the ban of the use of gas-powered leaf blowers by any person in the city. There's only exemptions really for emergency time. So this is seen in other cities where, like, if you have an emergency service and a leaf blower is needed to clear the way to make safe passage and such. We're looking at the citation on the property owner or landscape maintenance business. City Council suggested the property owner, but if you're a property owner, maybe you don't know what your landscape maintenance business is doing. So it could be that. We'll go to direction for City Council on who they want to focus. But some cities typically kind of like do the property owner, but by having it or, it could be either or. They can also direct code enforcement to just focus on property owners. We would first have a warning followed by fees afterwards. And this council was very adamant about education to the community. So they would like about a 2-year education program from passing the ordinance. So it wouldn't actually go into effect until July 2025 to allow for education for that. And we, as staff, are a small, mighty team, but I will probably say I am not a landscaping expert, but this is why we have been directed to work with a consultant who are landscaping experts and landscaping business people and testers of all the various electric landscaping equipment to work with us on an education outreach for the community. So we're working in the process of doing a contract with them to do multilingual education materials, because many of the landscapers are predominantly Spanish speakers as their first language. Also looking at multi-channels, so like radio ads, in-person events, online, flyering, etc. And then we're also focusing on not just like telling them about the ban, but also educating them about switching to electric, not just electric leaf blowers, but other electric landscaping equipment as well, since that will happen in the future soon. But we don't want to leave any businesses hanging. So California Core is a state program that has a point of purchase rebates for businesses. So we did an education event back in February to announce the program where professional landscapers can get rebates to buy commercial landscaping electric landscaping equipment at a discount when they go and buy it. And like some of the rebates are like up to 80%. So those are available from a state level, from the Air District level. There is the Commercial Electric Lawn and Garden Exchange Incentive Program, where essentially they exchange their their gas-powered landscaping equipment for rebates to purchase an electric one. And the Air District also has currently a residential electric lawnmower rebate program. And then citywide, we are offering through GWP, we work with our colleagues in GWP of implementing a new rebate program for the purchase of electric leaf blower for all GWP customers, and that's part of one of their public benefit programs. So there are rebates available for businesses in Glendale and the surrounding areas to transition to electric leaf blowers and other electric landscaping equipment. And our outreach and education so far about this issue is we've been mostly focusing on educating businesses and residents about the transition to electric landscaping and the different programs available. So we've worked through the city newsletter and our newsletter about the different rebate programs. We received through our council meetings about 13 public comments about this issue so far through all the council meetings. We had our one demonstration event back in February, and that led to like us flyering about the event and having information about the rebate program at different locations throughout the city. We worked with the American Green Zone Alliance, who helped put on the event, who brought the vendors in to test electric landscaping equipment, and they were able to speak to landscapers prior to the event and hand them information. We contacted a lot of businesses, organizations. We invested in social ads and a radio ad, and we had about 20 demo attendees despite the rain. So that's our outreach so far. And soon this month, we'll be going to council to introduce the ordinance on banning the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Okay, any questions?
Just one quick question. Have you reached out to homeowners associations or the Glendale Coordinating Council for the homeowners group? Because I'm sure a lot of them hire gardeners, and I'm just thinking that might be effective way to.
Yeah, so when we had the event back in February, we did reach out to, I think, pretty much all the business groups. We emailed them about the event, And once this passes, we'll definitely be reaching out to all those commerce groups about it. And then we'll also definitely be reaching out to landscaping businesses as well, not just in Glendale, but the surrounding areas, since, landscapers come in and out.
Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you again for bringing this to us and having that one opportunity, I think, one more opportunity to weigh in on it before it goes to council. One question regarding the outreach. I'm curious, what sort of feedback have you received from landscaping businesses and companies about this?
Well, about the ban, not quite much about it, but in terms of like electric equipment, they seem to be kind of interested in it. And about the equipment and testing out and liking the benefit program. So in terms of like the actual ban, we haven't received much feedback on whether or not landscape businesses want to ban it. But from the public comments so far, most of the people in support have been like residents who've been in support of it.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to hear. And I think I will just make a comment regarding the enforcement and would encourage, would ask that this be, I guess, recommended from me or whomever, the commission, that the enforcement be directed towards the homeowners. I think it makes the most sense. I think that as long as the homeowners are aware of this, this new ordinance, it sounds like we're going to be giving them a lot of time if this is going to be all the way up until 2025. So at that point, it just seems to me like they should be well aware and would be the ones that should be, given that fine or the slap on the wrist at least for not complying. So.
I had a question on the rebate program. So when someone buys electric leaf blower, let's say, do they have to turn in their gas one, or can that just end up in the next town over being used by somebody else?
Depends on the program. The exchange program with the air district, that one, the South Coast Air District, where you have to exchange your gas powered, you bring it in and it gets destroyed, so it can't be used. And then you're given an electric leaf blower, a rebate for an electric landscaping equipment. The California Core one doesn't require an exchange. It's a point of purchase.
Thank you.
About the rebate, AQMD pays for most of it, but not all of it, to my knowledge. So I would recommend, if we are going to have an in-house rebate program through Glendale Water and Power, let's make sure it's not duplicative. Let's make sure it pays for the difference, an additional amount, but not, one or the other.
The GWP one is like $40 or $50.
Okay. And is it contingent on the AQMD grant? So can you do both?
Well, in theory, you could do both.
You can stack it.
You could. The AQMD, though, would be, you could stack it, but I wouldn't see that being as possible, because if you look at California Core, you have to go to a registered dealer, for instance, to get your discounted voucher, and there aren't any registered dealers when I last looked in Glendale. They're all in like the neighboring cities, and GWP, you get $40 off if you buy it outside of Glendale, and you have to be a GWP customer. So the rebates for GWP were more for like the residential, since commercial, our businesses already get like very high rebates as is. But the California Core rebate is also just a certain pool, and eventually that will run out. And I don't know how big the pool is for the South Coast Air District.
South Coast Air District, has plenty of funds, and it's an ongoing program year-round. If we can find a way to marry the South Coast funds and the Glendale Water and Power funds, that would be my recommendation. If a consumer goes and takes advantage of the AQMD dollars, let's try to find a way that they can also tap into the Glendale Water and Power dollars, because then the equipment will be pretty much for free. If I recall, for $250 to $400 product, AQMD offers $200 if it falls within that range. Even if it's $50 from Glendale Water and Power, it adds to that bucket.
Yeah, the way the Glendale Water Power, they just need to show receipt of purchase.
Okay.
So, and it would come as GWP credit. So they won't necessarily check, did you already buy from South Coast Air District, if you just have a receipt already.
Okay. Good to know.
No, you go.
Thank you, Commissioner Barshosef. Elizabeth, I have a quick question. Oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. Go ahead. Oh yes, thank you. So we are doing outreach for 2 years until July 2025 until it's enforced. In that time, are we going to create like one flyer with a QR code that not only shows the rebate programs but what it is? Because I've talked to a few homeowners around me, and they haven't heard of it. Obviously, it hasn't been like full blown outreach yet. But if it does get to that point, can it be like attached to their GWP billing, or maybe in the newsletter or something similar? So it's like one flyer, not like multiple flyers of like, here's a flyer for rebate, and here's a flyer for the ordinance, and here's a flyer for like what's going on. So it's not as confusing for residents. Thank you.
Sure.
Agreed.
Thanks for the update. What am I thinking here? I am curious about the enforcement piece. I'm not quite sure how our enforcement team deals with issues like this, if it's something that they need to see with their own eyes to issue a citation, or if it's, I don't know, it could be simply somebody calling to complain, or if there's images that are shared as evidence. Do you have any insight on that?
How enforcement works in the city is our code enforcement officers have to visually see the violation. So they have to be on premise to witness the violation in order to give a citation. So for this ordinance, they would have to receive a call and go out there and witness it, which is a challenge of enforcement because the current protocol that this ordinance would be enforced would be through the current process, which is a passive or complaint-driven process, and then someone is scheduled to go out and view the citation. So that would be a definite challenge, which council is made aware of as a challenge. But the alternative is having someone patrolling, which adds additional costs and resources. So for now, council directed a passive approach.
Yeah, so I know with many of these services, some are done on a schedule. So perhaps a person could complain and say, you know, I observe this occurring at this property on Wednesdays between 8 and 10. I see that being a challenge for enforcement to actually do that at that time. So I wonder if for that reason, it might be easier to enforce if a code enforcement officer was driving around the community and seeing landscapers using the equipment that they're not supposed to be using and offering a citation that way. Or they would be proactively citing the property owner if they saw a landscaper, they happen to see a landscaper using gas-powered equipment at that property. So what I'm saying is, like, does it have to be complaint-driven, or can it be a proactive citation from a code enforcement officer that happens to be in the neighborhood anyway?
If council wants it to be proactive, then it would require code enforcement to re-examine how they currently do code enforcement and build in the resources and the budget to do that patrolling. If they are called out, what other cities have done is they just give a courtesy notice. So not a warning, but just a notice to the homeowners that that's not allowed. Here's the flyer, here's the information. So, I mean, if city council really wants it, they could, but at the last council meeting, they decided to go with the passive approach rather than the active approach.
Yeah, I guess even the warning would have to be evidence-based. Like in order to even get a warning, I feel like the threshold is so high. And so I'm just, perhaps we can revisit this after the ordinance is passed to determine the effectiveness of enforcement of something like this. So I'm very skeptical of the way that it's set up right now. Having said that, I do want to applaud the city for doing the pilot with our community services and parks folks to pilot this initiative and showcase to the community that it can be done, that we can transition to electric equipment successfully. So I like that approach that we as a city are taking an initiative and demonstrating to the public that we can shift over to more sustainable modes. So I'm very happy to have seen this play out this way. I guess my question would be, when is this going to council, or it has been adopted?
It would go to council later this month for introduction.
Introduction, but not adoption?
No. It gets introduced, and then there can be some slight changes, and then the following week, if they wish, it could be adopted. So introductions like here's first reading, and then adoption's the second reading, and when it goes approved.
I would suggest they leverage the My Glendale app. That's the same one that you would use to report graffiti if you notice it, or litter somewhere or something like that. That could be put on there too, and maybe they're asked to note like what time that was. I think a lot of gardeners are on a regular schedule, so if it was 9:30 on a Monday, it's probably the following Monday at 9:30 they'll be there, and it might be a little easier to enforce it.
The only thing I'll ask is, I don't think it's worthwhile pursuing for this particular item, but for future items, if we know that something's going to council, that we bake in enough time here at the commission to provide our official recommendation. So I'm much more in favor generally of taking action items and as a commission voting on something that we'd like the council to consider. Thank you.
Elizabeth, I'm not particularly updated in my code conduct violation laws. So let's say there's a first violation of $100. Does that money go to like the general fund, back to the rebate, planting more trees? Do we know?
No, I don't think so. Like with the tree fund, I believe that typically goes back to covering the costs of code enforcement.
Okay, so it's basically a sustainable model. Like we're not losing money by enforcing this in the city.
I don't have the answer to that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest escalating fees, like maybe $100 for the first offense, and then it doubles each time, something like that. To since it is a hassle to enforce it, we want to make sure it's not a slap on the wrist or worth taking a chance.
Another question. So this is just regarding the leaf blower bans. Is there a plan in place for the rest of the year to bring any other kind of possible ordinance for other small, two-stroke engines, or is this it for now?
I think for now, depends on what
Okay.
council wants.
Okay, great. Because I mean, certainly the lawnmowers are pretty annoying too and obnoxious, and the hedge trimmers and whatnot. So, all right, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, it's by engine though, right? Not just, if it's that two-stroke, whatever, even if it's a hedge trimmer, wouldn't that count?
This is only gas-powered leaf blowers.
Yeah, gas-powered, just leaf, okay, so not, okay. Not weed whackers, hedge trimmer,
No, this
okay.
is just gas-powered leaf blowers, but in 2024, the sale of any small off-road engine gas-powered is banned, so that could include weed whackers and stuff. But that's just the sale of those items will be banned in the state, not the use.
I think this is the kind of deliberation we should formalize in a vote when we have the opportunity to take action items. So we're asking excellent questions, and I think this should be covered as part of our climate action adaptation plan, because I do think, I'm going to venture to guess that we're going to want to make a bit more stronger recommendations on this topic.
Okay, thank you. Next item is 7, Sustainability Office Update, 7A, Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Update.
Chairperson Pinkerton and Commissioners, so we have begun the outreach that we talked about a little bit at the last meeting. So we had the initial focus groups in June, and the focus groups were community-based organizations that were invited to participate. And the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to give them a preview of the greenhouse gas inventory and the climate vulnerability assessment, and we wanted to get feedback on what climate impacts and climate vulnerability had been impacted their businesses or their organizations. And we also wanted to get feedback from them on other organizations that we should approach and speak to as we go forward with growing the outreach program that we're going to be doing. We have the second set of focus group meetings, which will be coming up in July. Invitations went out today. Regarding those additional invitations, so we've got some good responses in. A lot of people who couldn't attend the first ones said they're going to attend the second focus groups meetings. And again, that is to follow up on the feedback that was given to the consultants from the first focus group meetings. And then once they finish the second round of focus group meetings, that's when we'll be reaching out to the wider public in general. We'll be doing it through pop-up events, and other outreach type of events, using mini grants to try and get those communities that wouldn't necessarily attend these type of events to give them the opportunity to attend so we can begin to get their feedback. As I mentioned last month, we will be coming to the Commission in the not too distant future now with some of the adaptation and mitigation strategies that we're thinking of looking at. And as to Commissioner Bartos's point, that's when the Commission's going to have real opportunity to say, you know, what are you looking at? What are you looking in terms of air emissions or transport, etc. And we're going to be an opportunity for us to get your expertise and your thoughts and everything about, you know, how far we're going to be pushing this plan. And also when they come to the Commission at that time, we should be able to have a discussion on our goals, so our 2030 goals and our 2045 goals, and what the city is expected to meet on those goals. Overall, we're very happy with Rincon and the work they're doing. The work they did in the greenhouse gas inventory is excellent. And the climate vulnerability assessment, they nailed that too. They got all those impacts that we'll be facing Glendale going forward, and the heat days, the rain events, etc., and how that will impact our community. So, yeah, that's my update.
I have a quick question, if I may, and I'm sorry if this was covered before and I'm forgetting. As far as the focus group, so this is, Rincon is the one overseeing the focus groups, or no?
So it's been a partnership between us and Rincon. So we went around, we identified the different community groups within our organization. Rincon also suggested some groups that we should work with too. So between those two, and Rincon have a subcontractor, and we've asked them to ask a subcontractor to reach out again, because we noticed that through the groups that we've connected with, there's been very low. We haven't, to African American groups, we haven't had a response from them, to Latin groups and everything. So we want to make sure that we include those communities in as we go forward in the outreach.
I'm just commenting because I live fairly close to Grayson and in Grand Central, and then friends who live in Pelinconi. I don't think anyone was contacted. I mean, not that those are the only neighborhoods that are directly impacted, but it would have just surprising that I haven't heard of anybody from those areas that were participants, but maybe they were.
Yes, this was initial. We invited certain community-based organizations. So as we continue to do the outreach, you are going to hear there's going to be opportunity for communities to absolutely to give us their feedback and input.
Right, okay. I think that was it on the outreach. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item is 8, adjournment. Oh, we can go back to 7A.
So move.
I'll
Second? Oh. Either one.
The Sustainability Commission meeting is adjourned at 6:42.